Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the essentials of user-centered design. Now, if you're a student or an innovator who's dreaming up the next big thing in digital health, you're going to want to lean in, because this is a core concept you absolutely need to nail.
But before we get into the weeds, let me ask you a quick question, just to get your brain warmed up. When you're really focused on one thing, what are you completely blind to?
You might have heard of this famous experiment, the monkey business illusion. People are told to watch a video and count how many times a basketball is passed. It sounds simple, right? But while they're so focused on counting, a huge chunk of them totally miss a person in a full-on gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the scene. It's a wild example of how our focus can create blind spots, and it's the perfect metaphor for a huge trap we all fall into in design.
And that leads us to this crucial point. It's something called the false consensus effect. See, as designers, as creators, as innovators, we have this natural tendency to assume that everybody else thinks and acts and sees the world exactly like we do. We project our own reality onto our users, and just like in that illusion, we end up missing the gorilla in the room, which is what the user actually needs.
So what's the fix? How do we get past this built-in bias that we all have? Well, the professional solution is a really powerful framework that forces us to look beyond our own assumptions, and it's called user-centered design. At its heart, user-centered design, or UCD for short, is a pretty simple but really profound shift in how we think. It's all about moving the spotlight away from what we think users need and shining it directly on what they actually need. And you do that by making them an active partner in the entire journey from day one. And what's so cool about this slide is that it shows you what this really looks like. UCD isn't a box you just check off a list. No way. It's a continuous loop. It's this cycle of planning, exploring, building, and making decisions with your users, and then constantly tweaking things based on what they're telling you. Okay, but why is this so incredibly important, especially when we're talking about something as personal and critical as healthcare? Well, as this slide shows, there are basically 5 key pillars that make getting users involved an absolute non-negotiable. So think about it. Bringing users in makes your solution way more efficient because you're not wasting months building the wrong thing. It's more effective since it's designed to solve a problem that you know is real. And this one is huge in healthcare. It builds trust. It also upholds the ethical right people have to a say in the tools that affect their health. And finally, it bridges that massive gap between the tech experts, us, and the people we're actually trying to help. And this is where it gets really exciting. The impact of this way of thinking, it goes way beyond just making a single great app or a cool device. When you start focusing on things like ethics and bridging gaps, you actually start chipping away at some of the biggest challenges our world is facing right now. I mean, look at this. When you design for accessibility, you're not just making a better app. You're directly helping with UN goal number 3, good health and well-being. When you create solutions that work for people with different languages or tech skills, boom, you're tackling goal 10, reduced inequalities. All of a sudden, your class project or your startup idea, it's part of a much bigger, much more important global conversation. And this slide right here, this is that bigger picture. When you really practice user-centered design, your work literally plugs into this global blueprint. It stops being just about code and pixels, and it starts becoming a real, tangible contribution to making society better. Okay, so you're probably thinking, this sounds amazing, but how do I actually do it? Right, let's get practical. All this theory is great, but let's talk about how you can apply it to your own work. Here's a straightforward blueprint you can literally start using tomorrow. I want you to think about the whole process like this funnel. You start out super wide at the top. You're just gathering everything. Information, ideas, problems, all from your users. Then you start to methodically narrow things down. You screen ideas, you develop concepts, you test them, and you keep refining until you come out the other end with a single powerful solution that you know works because your users helped you build it. And here it is, your 5-step roadmap. First, you identify your target users, and be specific, not just doctors, but ER doctors in rural hospitals. Then, you get out there and explore their real-world needs. Do interviews, watch them work, use all that amazing insight to generate a bunch of ideas, then develop the best ones into actual concepts. And finally, you wrap it all up by preparing a clear value proposition that spells out exactly how your solution makes their life better. So let's bring it all home. The next time you start a project, I want you to pause and ask yourself this one critical question.
Because truly great design was never about your brilliant vision or your cutting-edge technology. It's about their problem, their needs, and ultimately, their success.